You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Luxury travel continues to surge, and the lifestyle hotel segment is similarly thriving, driven by experience-focused offerings that appeal to a new generation of travelers. My guest on The Luxury Item is Amar Lalvani, President and Creative Director of Hyatt's new Lifestyle Group, a dedicated division primarily focused on lifestyle hotels, including brands like The Standard, Thompson Hotels, Dream Hotels, Bunkhouse Hotels, and others. Amar joined Hyatt in 2024 following its acquisition of Standard International, where he served as Executive Chairman. At Standard, Amar focused on creative initiatives, including the development and launch of the company's newest brands, the Standard X and the Manor, as well as leading the successful sale of the company to Hyatt last year. Amar began his career in hospitality over 25 years ago with Starwood Capital Group. He later collaborated with renowned hotelier Andre Balazs on notable projects, including the Chiltern Firehouse and the Standard East Village. He eventually led a group of investors in the acquisition of the Standard brand from Balazs, forming Standard International. Now leading the lifestyle group at Hyatt, Amar will play a key role in Hyatt's brand-focused organization and evolution. Welcome to The Luxury Item, Amar.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So you joined Hyatt as president and creative director of its lifestyle group last year following Hyatt's acquisition of Standard International, where you were executive chairman since 2021. The company was on a roll, launching this rebellious younger sister hotel brand, Standard X in Melbourne, expanded your branded residences footprint in Miami, Bunkhouse Hotels expanding into new markets. So why did Standard International decide to sell to Hyatt?
It's a great question. And in fact, the reason is because of what you said. I think we were on such a roll and there was such an excitement and enthusiasm from our team and from people all over the world to do more standards and to keep bringing standards to the locations and grow Bunkhouse. And so because in fact, the brand, not so successful, but was so interesting to people that I wanted to keep going and the team wanted to keep going. But the realities of the hotel world are we didn't have the infrastructure. So the way I think about it is we had a wonderful brand and a fantastic team, I think the best in the world, but we had outgrown our infrastructure. And the challenges with opening from Ibiza to the Maldives to Melbourne to Bangkok, it really was a stress on the infrastructure we had. So we really needed a global partner, a partner that had that infrastructure, that had reach, that had distribution in order to keep doing what we were doing.
Yeah, and Hyatt itself has gone through a strategic transformation in recent years, including the introduction of 5 distinct brand portfolios. They have luxury, lifestyle, which you had, inclusive, classics, and essentials. Could you explain the thinking behind Hyatt breaking into brand groupings and how it's supposed to improve engagement and loyalty with guests?
I think I'll venture to say they've learned a bit from us as much as we've learned from them. And in thinking through having the right product in the right place, meeting the right people where they are, you need to have specificity around that. I use our team as an example. People who've met on our team, they're absolute specialists is not the right word, but they're dedicated to the things that they love, whether it's art, design, fashion, culture, music. And in order to have great hotels the way we do them, you need that specificity. Those things are different in the luxury space, they're different in the inclusive business. So you can't, the idea of generic one size fits all is over. It's been over for a long time. And that's not where Hyatt was, but they realized that meeting customers where they are and developing fantastic quality product for them necessitates the teams being organized in a way in order to be able to do that.
And so how did this strategy help attract developers and owners?
So we think about it, and we have multiples of types of constituents. So clearly taking care of our guests and our people coming into our venues and our group business, making sure they're well taken care of, they love what we do is of critical importance. The second big constituent is making sure that owners and developers love what we do. So the way we have this emotional attachment that we get to our guests, we want that same thing for developers because they're making the ultimate investment in building a Standard hotel or a Bunkhouse hotel or a Thompson hotel. So the more we can be excellent at what we do for our guests goes hand in hand with being excellent for our development partners.
And in your new role, you oversee the lifestyle group at Hyatt, which includes Standard International and Bunkhouse Hotels, which you carried over with you, as well as a number of other brands like Thompson Hotels, Dream Hotels, Joie de Vivre, and the buzzy new The Manor Hotel here in New York City, which we'll talk about in a second, and some others. So, how does the lifestyle portfolio of hotels position itself out there?
Well, the first thing I would say is I wouldn't have taken this job if I didn't believe in what we were doing. If I didn't believe in Mark Koplamazian's vision and the dedication to really building and nurturing and creating great brands. So first of all, I had to believe in that, which I do. I also come at it from a fan of all these brands. I grew up in this industry for the last 25 years, and although I was focused on originally building W hotels and then Standard since 2013, 2011, really, I've known Thompson forever since it opened in 2001. I was very friends with Jason Pomeranz and
Hmm.
have been a big fan of that hotel. That original Thompson Hotel is actually the Manor Hotel now, so things
Yep.
come full circle. So taking on the Thompson brand is out of I would say a standpoint of reverence for that brand. I was fascinated with when Hyatt created and launched Andaz in London and then New York. And then JDV, used to be called Joie de Vivre. I know Chip Conley for a long time, um, dating back to when just after he founded that brand. So taking on these brands is it's a real honor. It's a privilege. And what I think we bring to the table is a mindset of really thinking differently, thinking creatively, thinking outside the box, doing things that haven't been done before. And so it's a spirit that we bring and a team that we bring that hopefully can take these brands to the next level.
So, since joining, do you have a set of priorities that you're focusing on right now?
There's so much good work to do. The priorities has been to date really going out there and listening. And I think Hyatt does an extremely good job at this, and Mark does a great job of listening and understanding before taking action. So the last 6 or 7 months has been an enormous amount of travel to our offices around the world, to our hotels around the world, to meeting our teams, to meeting owners and developers, and really understanding it. The second order priority was to really get to the heart of what these brands are, each one of them is all about, so that we can communicate that to our teams, to our development partners, to our design partners. And if there's any, I would say not criticism, but if there's any area of improvement within Hyatt was the fact that they had built some of these brands and acquired these brands, but had not yet gotten to the point. Some of it was interrupted by COVID, but to articulate the brands in a very clear, distinct way that honors their history, but also takes them forward. So I've been working, listening, learning, and articulating is probably what I've been doing for the most part.
So, what does the pipeline look like over the next 12 to 15 months?
It's very robust. I'd say some roughly 30 hotels over the next 18 months or 24 months or so. We
Hmm.
can get the exact numbers too, but there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline and some really, really fantastic hotels that the team and I are dedicated to and excited about. I think about next week, I'm off to Brussels for the opening of the Standard in Brussels, which is an interesting market. I'd actually
Yeah.
lived there for a couple of years, but we're very excited about that. And what is interesting about that is it's actually going to be the first Hyatt hotel at all in Brussels. So one of the things that attracted me to Hyatt as a partner for us was that amongst the big companies, they're the least penetrated in many markets because they're smaller, which actually creates a huge opportunity in terms of growth and in terms of helping us being allowed to help define what Hyatt means in those markets. So Brussels is a great example of that. That'll open, as I said, it's open. I think it opened yesterday, and I'll be there next week. We have a new Andaz that just opened or is opening in the coming days in Miami, which I think will reset the tone for the Andaz brand. That's right on in Mid Beach in Miami. We have a beautiful property, Standard in Lisbon and Andaz in Lisbon, both opening next year. Standard has residences associated with that. So it's an incredible pipeline of new hotels that we couldn't be more excited about. We just opened the Standard in Singapore. So each one of these are remarkable landmark properties, and it's just honestly, it's a privilege to be part of it.
There seems to be a red hot interest in lifestyle hotels. They're generally defined as a property run by a major chain that evokes a boutique hotel feel, like tending to be more design forward and featuring food and beverage as an integral part of the guest experience. I was reading that the lifestyle hotels are expected to make up 23% of the hotel development pipeline worldwide by 2025. Over the past decade, lifestyle hotel average daily rates have commanded a significant premium over non lifestyle hotel average daily rates, too. Why has there been a boom in lifestyle hotels?
Well, there's a fairly long history, and in fact, I would say the two people in my mind, maybe three, the two or three people in my mind who started this movement, certainly Ian Schrager,
Hmm.
Andre Balazs, who I used to work with, who founded the Standard brand, Chip Conley, who founded Thompson, so started JDV, and Liz Lambert, who founded Bunkhouse Hotels, and Barry Sternlicht, who took these hotels those concepts and created W. I've had the privilege of working with alongside or in different capacities with all of these individuals. And really what they did was come from outside of the industry and think about how to do things differently. And they imagined that a hotel could be more than a hotel, that it could be a social gathering point. It could be a place that builds community. It could be a place that has nightlife and dining. And so I credit a lot to people that came before me to start this movement. And as I see it today, the growth is from two standpoints. One is the guests who are looking for more, who have higher expectations. The idea that a hotel would have good design, that was a novel idea. The
Hmm.
idea that it could have a comfortable bed, that was a novel idea. The idea that it could have a nightclub or a great restaurant, those were all at one point novel ideas. Those things are table stakes now and somewhat taken for granted. So we have to get better and better, and guest expectations are higher and higher because they're looking for those things. You hear a lot about people, especially the younger generation, spending more on experiences rather than products. All of that stuff is real, it's happening, and you see it in the numbers that you quoted. And then what comes from that is when there's a consumer demand or a guest demand, it comes from through the capital side. So owners and developers are looking at how to maximize the value of their real estate, and doing something different and something special is a way to maximize value versus doing something that's a commodity. And if you do it right, you take a place like the Standard Highline, for example. In 2015, that property did over 100, before COVID, did about $100 million of revenue, which was like something like $2,000 per square foot of revenue, which is absolutely crazy. But you do that because you're creating exceptional experiences for the people that come in the door. So if you do both those things, take care of the guests in an incredible way, give them those experiences, and the returns then follow, then the developers come and do that. And it's this virtuous cycle, which is why you've seen the growth in these hotels.
Do you think there are broader cultural influences that are driving the growth of lifestyle hotels?
I do. I think, if you go back about 10 years ago when we acquired Bunkhouse Hotels, which I fell in love with as a customer,
Hmm.
as a guest, there were places that were considered secondary markets or tertiary markets. And that was a city like Austin where Bunkhouse was housed, or a place like Houston, or a place like New Orleans, or Minneapolis, or Tucson, or Boise. Like these places at that time, they did not have anything like what a bunkhouse was. And then you saw this, what I think about is the democratization of culture and culinary and art, and people moving, and even if that partially accelerated by COVID, people moving to places where they hadn't been. So this creative talent that was leaving the big cities and creating beautiful things all around the country. So I do think there's a cultural movement of people setting their expectations higher, people eating better, healthier, more quality, people appreciating design. So this kind of democratization of luxury and lifestyle is absolutely taken hold. And I think that's fueling what you see in the growth in the market.
Yeah, I mean, the demand for luxury and lifestyle travel experiences continues to grow at an impressive rate. Some of it has to do with the increased number of high net worth individuals, while at the same time, we're seeing increased appetite for experiences over material goods, and younger generations are willing to spend more of their money on upscale travel or more experiences. How are the lifestyle group of hotels keeping its finger on the pulse of these trends and reimagining hospitality for the next generation of travelers?
Well, I consider myself extremely lucky in what I've done over the years, and the people that I've learned from. And what I've always been able to do or tried to do is not really chase or actively keep my finger on the pulse for the sake of doing so, but just be in the flow of what's happening, and to come at this from a guest experience standpoint. So I think of one of my biggest weaknesses is I'm not a hotel operator. I never have been. One of my biggest strengths is that I'm not a hotel operator, never have been.
Hmm.
So everything I do, everything I try to create with the team is based around how a guest sees it, how a customer perceives it. So I take something like the Manor, which you mentioned before we started the conversation, before we started recording the conversation. Um, we created that last year, and it came out of, I would say, my mind, but our team's mind, in that what are we looking for that doesn't exist today? And I'm actually happen to be speaking with you, luckily from a friend's boat in the Caribbean, and try to get a little time away before the big trip. And what I found, and I think you may feel the same, is some of the best experiences I've ever had from a hospitality standpoint are not from a hospitality company, or not even from a hotel.
Hmm.
They're from staying at a great friend's home, on a great friend's boat, in a great friend's villa, in a great friend's apartment, because the intimacy that you have, the generosity that you have, the private moments that you have are so profound, and you're not being hovered over is a strong word, but someone's always not there to serve you because they give you that space and they give you that privacy. Yet every detail is attended to in a perfect way. So the vision for the manor was, what would it be like to stay at your best friend's apartment in Soho if your best friend were more connected than you, cooler than you, more, have a bit better taste than you? What would that actually feel like? And that's how the manor was created. So when you see this bustling street side restaurant, but above that, a small lobby with privacy, a living room that feels like your apartment, a private rooftop terrace, and this secluded, intimate atmosphere without the bells and whistles that you see in a luxury hotel. To me, that was something that was missing, that is embedded in hospitality in homes with friends, but not in commercial hospitality.
It almost sounds like the anti Airbnb.
I would say it's the anti-Airbnb in the sense that I'm a big fan of Airbnb in certain standpoints, but the way I think about the manor is that it's really the intersection between a private residence with that intimacy and generosity I spoke about, with a members club without the pretension of having to apply, but with the knowledge that the people there are all feeling like they're part of this club, and the cross with a hotel, which has the services and the consistency that you would expect. So I thought about all those things that were happening and say, what is the best of each of those worlds? And that's how we born the manor.
Hyatt has a massive loyalty program with well over 50 million members. It's an important pillar in your overall strategy, and your loyalty members are likely more upscale than the average American. How does Hyatt's formation of dedicated branding groupings like your lifestyle group play into the larger loyalty program game?
So one of the big reasons we were attracted to Hyatt is the loyalty program. The reality is that that's an important. We were never big enough to have that, and what we did is build loyalty in a very old school way, which I think is still very important, which is getting to know our guests as well as we could, knowing exactly where they're coming from, how they take their martini, how they take their coffee in the morning, what their kids when their kids' birthdays are. Really, really knowing our guests. That gets harder over time, and it gets harder as you scale. We were very proud to have started at Bunkhouse, a database of 1 million loyalists, people that love what we do. That was a big deal for a company our size. But then you say, when you open in a place like the Maldives, or you open in Melbourne, or you open in Bangkok, where we don't have the recognition, we don't have that base of people, that makes it a lot harder to ramp up the hotels. So I was excited as we grew to make sure that there was a built-in customer base that we could tap into. And Hyatt's, as you said, it skews vastly more luxury and upscale. So we're very excited about that. Now, to your question, how it plays into our groups, what we are going to be heavily focused on is combining what I talked about in terms of what we did and how we built loyalty with how Hyatt's built loyalty. So that means getting very deep into CRM, very deep into allowing us to know those guests better and better, and causing this network effect of bringing our guests and our customers into that loyalty program so they can enjoy the benefits across the world. So if we can do that, I think we're onto something very special.
So, in your previous life as executive chairman at Standard International, you were responsible for developing a number of properties, including the Standard East Village here in New York City. You soon took the business from a handful of hotels to 20 locations in places like London, the Maldives, Bangkok, Ibiza. You launched a Standard X Hotel in Melbourne last year. Since its debut on Hollywood Sunset Strip in 1999, the Standard has really been an irreverent disruptor, dominating the social scene as an insider-only playground for travelers, A-listers, and these boundary-pushing creatives. I still remember the late-night parties at the Boom Boom Room here in New York City. At the heart of the brand, creativity and innovation have reigned supreme. Now that Standard is under the Hyatt family, will it maintain its distinctive DNA?
Absolutely, and that's why I'm here. And so I think you saw last weekend. You may have seen last weekend, the Met Gala after party at the Boom Boom Room
Yes.
happened
Yep.
as always. And yeah, I think I wasn't there because I was traveling, but I heard it was more fun and more irreverent than ever. Even though it's 15 years in,
That's
so
possible.
that I didn't know that was possible, but it was quite. And I think I was reading some of the articles about it, but people were dancing on tables, and that hasn't happened in a few years. So that makes me very happy. Uh, that coming out of COVID, that people are dancing on
Right.
tables again at the Boom Boom Room. So that makes me happy. So, when we were getting this deal done with Hyatt, before it was closing, the CEO of Hyatt, Mark Hoplamazian, asked me, would I stay involved? And I felt an obligation to stay involved because I love the brand and I love the team that we built. I love our properties. So I was happy to stay involved, and was not surprised that he asked me to, and I gladly accepted. But he also asked me to take on the other lifestyle hotels within the lifestyle brands within their portfolio, as you mentioned, Thompson, Dream, Andaz, JDV, etc. And to me, that was an indication of that Hyatt and Mark and the board are very serious about doing this the right way, and serious about making sure that we keep not only the standard DNA, but our way of our mentality, our mindset to do what we can to make the brands within the lifestyle portfolio for Hyatt that much more special. So to me, that's a big demonstration. And I had a couple conditions is a strong word, but a couple recommendations or the things that were necessary for me to make this a success. One was that we needed to keep all of our team together. So
Mhm.
this was not going to be an acquisition about synergies, about layoffs, about cost cutting. This was about creating taking something that is special, making sure it stays special, nurturing it, giving it resources, but also leveraging it to make the rest of the brands more special. So it was very important for me to keep our team together because I can't do any of this at all, truly, without the team that we built. Um, and of course, welcoming Hyatt colleagues into the team as well. And I have a big expression that I say all the time within Hyatt: 1 + 1 = 3. That's why we did this, and that's what we need to fulfill. The second was we had agreement to do no harm to our organization, do no harm to their
Mhm.
organization, and that is an underlying principle that if we ever see something, hey, something's going off the rails here, we're losing our DNA, or we're doing something that doesn't make sense, right? Let's raise our hand and say, no, that was not the intention here. The third thing was to me, it was imperative that the Hyatt brands that we were taking on were moved out of Chicago from a brand standpoint. And I love Chicago at the second city. It's an incredible place, but we also needed to put them with some autonomy in places like New York and Austin and Bangkok, where our offices were, to make sure that we could get the right creative talent in order to do exactly what you said, to keep the DNA and to make sure that there was that separation from a brand standpoint that makes the best of the Hyatt infrastructure, but also keeps the best of our identity, independence, and autonomy. And Mark was agreed to all those things.
So I want to go back to the Manor Hotel, which you just opened up here in New York City, a 97-room design-led hotel here in Soho. So it's a new brand for Standard International. You explained a little bit about the concept behind it and what the gap it's filling in New York City. And so who are you hoping it attracts compared to its sister, the Standard Hotel, which is just a mile up the road?
Great question. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Sometimes it's how you feel. But if I were to say broad brush, the Standard was founded 25 years ago on the Sunset Strip, as you mentioned, and the Standard Highline, God, opened I guess 15 years ago or so.
Hmm.
And they've been extraordinarily successful hotels, but the crowd has grown up, and I count myself among those people who were obsessed and love and still do love the Standard, but have grown up. And so I would say it's a more mature clientele. It doesn't necessarily mean older, a more mature clientele who is looking for a bit of a more intimate experience. I think of the way that Standard turned hospitality on its head by putting the city first, by putting the community first, and giving guests special access to that. So the nightclubs that you referenced in Hollywood, or the Boom Boom Room, or the restaurants that we've had in our locations, the cultural events that we've had have been so significant. And the whole idea was that this is a cultural epicenter, and the guests would get a privileged access to that by booking a room there. The Manor goes the other way, which is this is a cocoon all for the guests. It's an experience that allows us to know them, to be intimate with them, for them to know each other. And so when I think about what I was looking for in a hotel, this is what I was looking for, is that type of experience. So I would say the sensibility for design, the sensibility for lovely food and beverage offerings, all of that remains the same. The sensitivity for a perfect cocktail and great music, but the approach is different. One is wide open to the city, and one is more intimate and focused on the guest.
And the manor features interiors by Milan-based Hannes Peer Architecture, who normally does residential design. What was Hannes Peer's approach to taking on this project that made it interesting for you?
It's a great question, and Hannes's genius in this design, it comes through and through. But it really was a collaboration between our head of design at Standard International, named Verena Haller, who's worked with me for many years, and who's done great projects like the Standard in London and the Standard in Bangkok, these award-winning projects. And she comes from an area in Italy, the Dolomites, in northern Italy, in the mountains. And one of her great skills is to track designers at all times, young designers, people who have not been in hotels before, and really get to know them and keep them as a roster and as friends who, when we find the right project, we can call them up and say, hey, would you want to work with us? That's how Hannes came into the project. Verena had seen something that he had done, an exhibition in Paris, and had gotten to know him. And when this project came up, she said, Amar, I think Hannes would be perfect. And I got to know him. And it's the imagination of, if this were your or my beautiful apartment in Soho, who might I want to design it? And when I looked at Hannes's work, I thought, this is the guy who I would love to design the apartment. And so that's how he came into the picture. And it was a big risk to use a designer who's never done a hotel before. I had faith in his desire and willingness to learn, and Verena's willingness and ability to guide him. And we wanted it to have this really tailored, thoughtful residential feel, which Hannes is perfect at. We also wanted it to be a place where you really don't know what decade you're in. There are references from all kinds of, whether it's brutalist architecture or artwork from around. You didn't know exactly what decade you were in. It's kind of this fantasy wonderland. You can
Hmm.
see the Milanese influence, but you can see a lot of other references there as well. You can see in the penthouse, we modeled it after Halston's office in the 1970s,
Hmm.
this monochrome red, which is just a stunning, stunning view. So we wanted someone to really get you into this immersive experience where it's a residential feeling, but you also don't know what decade you're in. You're just fascinated by everything you see, whether it's even the Gioponti inspired wall on the elevator. His ability to put materials and colors together in ways that are unexpected is just remarkable. So we're super happy with that. I'll never forget when we finished it. Basically finished. There was a week of opening, and Hannes came to New York, and I waited for him at the entryway, and I took him in there, and we walked up the stairs on the marble stairs that we have, and he looked down, and I swear he had tears in his eyes.
Hmm.
It was one of the most emotional. It was incredible because he said, Amar, you let me do this, and this is everything that's ever been in my head in one place. So thank you. And it was I felt so touched by that. And the reason the product came out so great is because someone like that, along with Verena and me and so many of the team, put their heart and soul into this project, and it shows. And that was the emotion. So I went downstairs, I got him a master key, and I said, "Here's the key. I'm going to leave you now. Just enjoy yourself." And yeah, he spent 3 hours in the building, walking from room to room to room, looking at every single detail. Just fascinated that the idea that we trusted him to bring this to life for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in 2018, Hyatt acquired Two Roads Hospitality, the group that owned Destination Hotels, Joie de Vivre, and Thompson Hotels around the world, immediately expanding its footprint and pipeline. After the acquisition, Hyatt started growing the Thompson portfolio across a spectrum of destinations in the US and internationally. I remember the first Thompson Hotel at 60 Thompson Street down here in Soho back in the early 2000s. Thompson has this strong heritage of capturing the spirit of New York. It had the cachet and cool factor. It was this magnet for cultural seekers and creative types. So since Thompson found a new home at Hyatt and has grown to 20 or so properties, how has it been able to take the brand in new directions while still honoring its heritage of this cool New York City hotel?
Yeah, no, as I said, I came at this as a fan of Thompson, so it's an honor to be able to carry it forward. But I think they've done a great job with Thompson. Partly because Thompson started with such a strong DNA. I think the aesthetic of Thompson is very clear. It's got this really beautiful juxtaposition of old and new aesthetics. It's got a very much of a clubhouse feel to it in terms of a social club feeling that Jason had created and always had. I think even just looking at New York, even though 60 Thompson now is the manor, if you look at the Beekman Thompson Hotel downtown,
Yep.
is a beautiful representation of Thompson. I think if you look at Thompson Central Park South, it's the uptown version of that, even with the burger joint in there, but also the feeling that you get that those two hotels are very consistent with the original Thompsons. We opened a new one in Madrid, which came out very well, and Shanghai opens this year. So I would say, as a tribute to Jason, the DNA of Thompson was so strong that it's been carried through, I think, very well by Hyatt. I think the space that 60 Thompson served in New York is very similar to what for example, the new Thompson in Austin serves. So I think because of the strength of the DNA and the respect that Hyatt has for brands and for that brand, I think it's been carried through exceptionally well across the globe.
You've been in the hospitality business long enough to know that designing premier guest experiences at the forefront. What have been some of your biggest observations about how hospitality has evolved in the last 10 years?
Oh, well, I was reflecting on it because I was at this conference in Berlin called IH. It's an investment hotel conference. And I realized that I was there. The first time I went was 20 years ago to that conference. And
Hmm.
I was a young man at that time, and I was responsible for the development of W hotels in Europe, Africa, Middle East region. And at that time there were 8 W hotels all in America, none in anywhere in the rest of the world. And I would go to this conference and people were like, "What are you talking about?" Like they had no idea
Hmm.
what is this silly thing called W, and what do you mean that the hotel's going to have, they show me this video of Randy Gerber with Cindy Crawford coming in the building,
Yeah.
and then, all those kind of old school, and and most of the developers kind of would shut the door in your face, like with no interest and no idea what you're talking about, because they had a much more property mentality than a lifestyle mentality. And then sure enough, I did the W in Barcelona, and then in Istanbul, and then in Doha, and then St. Petersburg, and then London, et cetera, et cetera. And so going back 20 years later, this idea of what is a boutique hotel or a lifestyle hotel, everybody knows that now. But 20 years ago, I was there, they had no idea. So what does it mean now? It means that the stakes have been raised, the competition is more significant, everybody is trying to do what we do, and the big companies are launching brand after brand after brand. And the question becomes, are these really brands, or are they names? And to me, if you're not putting the dedication and the team and the heart and the soul that I talked about when I talked about Hannes walking in and having tears in his eyes, that is not what this is about. It's about much more than that. When I think about the people that I've worked with, whether it's Andre or Liz, the heart and soul that they put into these hotels and these concepts, and the way that our team has taken that forward, to me, that's what it's all about. And I think the guest feels that. But that's very intangible. It's kind of like you feel it when you know it when you feel it. But I question the companies that are starting brand after brand and just putting a name and doing customer surveys and thinking that because you put a DJ in the lobby that that's what it's about. It's really not. It's much, much, much deeper than that. For those of us who do our best every day to build incredible things for people, we know the difference. I think the people that come through our doors can feel it.
I want to shift a little bit. With experiential dining booming, more hotels across the board are starting to invest in world-class food and beverage programs. It seems like a smart business move. By designing delicious and amazing culinary experiences, addressing sustainability issues, and seeking creative approaches to new dining styles, these hospitality brands are really well positioned to serve today's traveler. How does Hyatt's lifestyle portfolio explore the power of food and beverage and its dining spaces and into its offerings?
So Hyatt has a long history of world-class food and beverage, in particular in Asia. So the foundation of Hyatt International in Asia, when you go and see what happens at a place like the Park Hyatt in Tokyo,
Hmm.
or the Grand Hyatt in Hong Kong or Singapore, there's a tradition within Hyatt to have world-class dining well before other companies have done that. So that was one of Hyatt's staples. Now, I will say that it's a tough business, the food and beverage part of it. The rooms business is much more predictable and easier, not easier, everything's hard, but it's less volatile. And you can build a hotel that lasts for 20, 30, 50, 100 years. The best hotels are old, but the restaurants in there may have changed several times. So they're two different, fundamentally, they're two different business models. And to be good at both of them, it really comes back to having the right talent. And that is absolutely everything. And there's an enormous amount of talent out there on the food and beverage side in the restaurant world, but you need to bring them in-house to be working within the company in order to actually do great things. And because the mentality is different, the way you deal with and interact with chefs and front of house people and culture drivers within restaurants and maitre d's, and there's a lot of characters that are in the food and beverage business in a different way that you see in the hotel. So having the right team on the ground, having the right team to oversee that and connect with those people to make special experiences is a big part of the puzzle. So what we've done, as I structured the group, as going to go forward within the lifestyle group, I promoted and elevated a gentleman on our team, Frank Giacomini, who came from the food and beverage background, and put him in co-head in charge of operations. To me, that was an elevation of food and beverage to be on par with hotel operations. And that signal, I think, was very important. And also to make sure that everybody knows F&B is a huge part of what we do. And if we don't do it well, we're not going to be able to compete. So I think a lot of it is the history that Hyatt has, the willingness to put people in place from outside the industry, from outside the hotel industry, that are specialists in food and beverage, and have them oversee big elements of the company, because it shows that prominence. The other thing I would say is a big deal is the ability to form relationships with world-class chefs and creative talent, not necessarily the ones who have already made it to the top, but the ones who are up and coming in their career, and become a platform for their creativity. That served us extremely well at Standard, with people like Peter Sanchez, who opened Decimo at the Standard in London, Paco Ruano, who opened Oho at the Standard Bangkok on the rooftop there, Alex Stupak, who's a great friend of mine, who opened Otter, which I believe you went to at the
Yep.
Manor. These are people who, like Hannes, pour their heart and soul into the food and beverage part of the business, and our ability to partner with them, bring them in, and make them part of the team, the same way we did with Hannes on the architecture and design. That's the magic. And to me, I can help direct and oversee and put the pieces together, but getting these unbelievably talented and creative people to actually come on board and then have them work together for a common mission, that's the secret sauce.
The Standard expanded its brand and trademark lifestyle into residences space, breaking ground on its first property in Midtown Miami last year. You also have residences in Lisbon and Austin. Branded residences have gained significant traction, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hotel brands and non-hotel luxury brands have jumped on the bandwagon too. Why was expanding into branded residences a natural move for the Standard? Was your hotel clientele asking for it?
One of the things I loved about the Standard from the beginning, when I first interacted with it 20 plus years ago, and then from when I joined the company and joined Andre Balazs in 2010 originally, was that I always believed the Standard was a brand that was more than a hotel. And that just if you look at the logo and what it looks like, and it feels like something bigger than just a hotel. If you look at the elements that we have done and that is attracted from the spa in Miami, which has this social bathing culture of Russian and Turkish bathhouses, to all of the restaurants that we've done, to the rooftop nightlife, to the Laban, a rooftop nightclub with a swimming pool in it, to the Met Gala after parties, to the cultural events, to the retail, to some even got into publishing, Standard Culture, all those things. I always believed it was much more than a hotel and had a cultural resonance in the zeitgeist that was much bigger than that. So with that lens, it kind of was an obvious transition into residences, being that you have people that stay in the hotel, you have developers who build the hotel, then you have a third class who said, I would want to own part of the lifestyle. I would like to live the Standard. And it seemed not obvious, but it seemed like something that was natural, especially when I saw brands who don't have that cultural resonance and don't, in my mind, speak to a bigger picture than just a hotel brand going into it. So we were approached in a few years ago with a developer I'd known for a long time in South Florida. And he said, we have to bring the Standard brand to life in residential. I said, we've been thinking about it a long time. Okay, let's do a project together. We picked a location in Midtown Miami just during or going, I'm not sure it was during COVID, but around that time. And I thought of this idea of having a pied a terre for young people,
Hmm.
which was that it had always been having a pied a terre was always our second home, was always for established people, wealthy people who could do that. And obviously that makes sense. But when I saw this trend of people being able to work remotely, to live these different lifestyles, to be able to have use mobile devices and Zoom and all those things, and I saw them also getting away from their homes and this propensity I talked about for younger generation to travel. I said, why couldn't you do a pied a terre for young people? And what better place is there than Miami? Especially those who know the brand well in New York. So
Right.
we did about 200 units in Midtown Miami, small units, but really well designed, well sized. We have a pickleball disco ball pickleball court in there. We have co-working space. We have a beautiful bakery and cafe downstairs. We have a rooftop restaurant. All residents, all residential, no hotels. So then it was sold out so quickly, which was a testament to the concept and a testament to the brand. And so from there we did another Standard residences in London. I'm sorry, in Lisbon, which all sold out very quickly, adjacent to our hotel that'll open next year. We're doing a second project in Brickell in Miami, given the first one sold out. We did a bunkhouse residences at the Saint Cecilia in Austin, which was it's one of our beautiful hotels. We did residences next door. So I would say it was not overly strategic, but it was seeing a place in the market and understanding that our brands resonate beyond just the hotel stay, and so far so good.
So, do you see a potential for other hotels in the lifestyle group getting into the branded residence space?
For sure, they have already to some extent. Thompson has a great project in Mexico that's doing very well, and I certainly see all of our maybe not all of our brands, but I certainly see as we as we get the loyalty for these brands, and I had a guy I used to work with said there's something like loyalty beyond reason. When you have a brand like Standard that sometimes has loyalty beyond reason, people will want to have anything associated with that brand. So Thompson obviously has a great potential in that realm. Standard has proven itself. Bunkhouse has proven itself. I think you will definitely see with Andaz as well.
So, Amar, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So, if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation. So, the friends whose your boat you're on now cannot pick you up from this deserted island, or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody with a boat or an airplane to get you off that island. It's just you on this lonely island, lots of sand and palm trees. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
I love that question. And I'm going to say two items, but I think you'll give me a pass because they're connected. It would be a beautiful sketchbook and a beautiful pen. And because, I have one with me now, and whether it's getting your thoughts down on paper, whether it's doing your best at a little artwork for yourself, or figuring out, writing while you're on the desert island, your frustrations and your dreams and your wishes. I think to me, I'm always sketching and writing and drawing, and it can also, I guess, keep you from getting bored.
Amar Lalvani, President and Creative Director of Hyatt's Lifestyle Group. Thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.